We live in a world where tech companies we purchase from are forcing our hands when it comes to buying new things. Buy a smartwatch, for example, and in 5 years or so you might not be able to use the same features you do on it today. Apple just announced the devices they will stop supporting with software updates this year, which I covered last week. It got me thinking though, which really impressive devices do I use which haven't had an update in years and will probably never need one? This is my favourite pair of headphones in the world, the Parrot Zik from 2012. Yeah, the same Parrot who make drones now used to make headphones. Designed by French architect Philippe Starck, these over-ear headphones were designed to be the absolute finest in portable Bluetooth audio. Their design may be brilliant, but they're not just high-tech on the outside. The side of the Parrot Zik ear cup is a touch-sensitive panel, meaning you can swipe up and down to adjust the volume, left and right to change tracks, and tap to play and pause what you're listening to. Despite their age, the headphones have active noise cancellation, which is far from the AirPods Pro levels we've come to expect, but really isn't so bad. There's a mic on board for taking calls hands-free, with a jawbone sensor embedded in one of the ear cups. This tells the microphone to focus on your voice when it can tell you're talking. I don't take calls much on these though, to be honest. The mic's quality hasn't really aged well. Charging is done with a micro USB cable, which is old school, but thankfully I can just plug it into my Xbox controller cable, which uses the same connector. The ear cup cover, which isn't touch sensitive, is removable and kept in place by magnets, so you can just pull it away. Underneath you'll find the 3 watt-hour battery, which is removable as well. I carry 2 of these so I can swap them out during long journeys. The sound quality of the Zik is their strongest suit though, absolutely brilliant for the time, and it's fair to say headphone audio quality hasn't moved on too much since. A lot of people say that these days it's more about finding a sound profile you enjoy listening to than finding a really objectively good pair, and the Zik are just that for me. Parrot designed a free app that lets you not only control the equalizer for these to fine-tune the sound, but they have some really cool spatial audio type effects going on. You can decide whether you want to listen as though you're in a concert hall, or just hear the regular studio sound. There's also directional settings, letting you choose how wide or narrow you want the sound's origin to be. The Parrot Zik are 12 years old now, but because they were ahead of their time technologically and had replaceable batteries too, they really don't feel it. I'm going to keep using these until the drivers blow out or something else goes catastrophically wrong. If that does happen, I'll probably just buy another pair used, to be honest. Another piece of relatively old technology I use a lot is my iPad mini. It's from 2012 as well actually, and despite only having support up to iOS 9, I can still read any books I like on it from the Apple Books app. The display is pretty poor, with a 1024 by 768 resolution at just 163 pixels per inch. If anything, that just keeps the performance on the old 32-bit chip snappy though. The battery life is pretty crazy too if I'm just reading. I can go weeks without charging this thing sometimes. That's all there is to it really. I use the iPad for reading books and it still does the job perfectly. People forget that the iPad was released at a time when e-readers and e-book stores were a booming trade. A lot of the early adopters bought them as Kindle replacements, and while there are hundreds of features I'm missing out on by not upgrading to a modern iPad, it's fair to say I'm personally not really missing any of them. My iPhone does most of the phone-like things an iPad can, and anything computer-like can be done by my computer, basically. Some of you may recognise this keyboard from my most popular video. It's the Apple wired keyboard produced from 2003 to 2007. I use this on my desktop computer setup when playing games, editing, and whatever else really. It's a super simple keyboard, but it does have some standout features. As well as lasting 20 years without any faults, it has 2 USB ports you can plug things like mice into. The entire thing is incredibly easy to disassemble, which I did recently, giving every part inside a really good clean. There's nothing fancy about this keyboard. It's not mechanical, and it just uses membrane switches, which are pretty common in most keyboards from this era. They now sell for under $10 used. I guess it just stands out to me because after 20 years, it still works fine and is compatible with all the Macs I own. It could probably go for another 20, let's be honest. It looks great on my desk still as well, so why would I buy a new one? Back to the topic of audio now. I did make a video about this, but not a lot of people saw it. This is the Bowers & Wilkins Zeppelin Air from 2011. The Air is for AirPlay, which this thing supports, meaning I just choose it from the control center anytime I'm at home. I don't need to turn it on or anything. The sound is provided by two 25-watt tweeters, two 25-watt mid-range drivers, and a 50-watt subwoofer. For its size, it's still really impressive. Not only is the bass booming, almost as though it's coming from a standalone subwoofer, but the upper frequencies bring a really high quality sense of clarity to the sound. Bowers & Wilkins used their Nautilus tube technology in the tweeters for the Zeppelin Air, and if you're big into audio, there's a lot of gravity behind that world-renowned name. Some compare this to the iPod Hi-Fi, a speaker made by Apple which was discontinued after just a year of production. The two can be had for a similar bargain price of $50 to $100 if you're lucky. But yeah, the Zeppelin Air is clearly out on top here. The 5 different drive units compared to 3 on the iPod Hi-Fi bring a lot more fine-tuning to the delicate parts of audio recordings. The low-end sound is also capable of going lower, with the whole thing just a little bit louder too. If you're after a hi-fi without the hi-fi price, or the size of a multi-speaker setup, this thing is absolutely unbeatable for under $100. Look on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and you're bound to find a bargain eventually. Of all the techie bits I've talked about today, this is the one that outright impresses me the most still. Stupid good quality from Bowers & Wilkins, but would you expect anything else from them? I suppose the only drawback is AirPlay 1 being inside. While still supported on all iPhones and iDevices, there's a couple of seconds delay in playback which I could certainly do without. Outputs on this thing, by the way, include Ethernet for using it as a network speaker, 3.5mm for wired connections to most things, and a 30-pin dock for pre-2012 Apple devices, which charges and carries audio. My iPod fits on there nicely. So, a bit of an odd video today. Just thought I'd like to feature some of these things. I wanted to illustrate how good technology was in some categories up to a couple of decades ago. Another point worth taking from this video maybe though is that if something works for what you bought it for and you don't have a need for something newer, it's definitely a good idea to just leave that thing be. Why contribute further to the stream of non-recyclable tech waste that's going to be shipped off straight to a landfill just to buy something that will invariably follow the same path eventually? Thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreons for supporting the channel financially. If you enjoy talking about old tech, then why not join the Discord server, where there's conversations about all sorts, all of the time. Subscribe if you like the video, of course, and I'll see you in the next one.